Good day, everyone. Let's discuss another green algae, Eudogonium. This time, we are going to check out a filamenta type of chlorophysian member, Eudogonium. Eudogonium, the name is derived from two words, eudos meaning swollen and gonas meaning reproductive structure. So swollen reproductive structure. So organs are the algae which is carrying swollen reproductive structure. That is what Eudogonium is all about. And speaking about the systematic position, Eudogonium belongs to the class Chlorophyceae order Eudogoniales, family Eudogonaceae. And this is the only genus of the family with an unbranched filament. And they are found exclusively in fresh water, and about 400 species have been reported, of which more than 200 have been reported from India. The common Indian species include Eudogonium cardiacum, Eudogonium elegans, Eudogonium tenuis, Eudogonium oblongulum, etc. And these are seen usually in fresh water as filamentous algae and are seen in ditches, ponds, pools, and lakes. What you see here on the left-hand side is a Eudogonium thallus, the filament. As you can see, it is an unbranched filament. Describing the plant body, the thallus is green, multicellular, and unbranched filamentous. The filaments carry cells which are arranged end to end in a uniseriate row. The filament can be distinguished into three main regions. The lowermost region, as you can see here, is known as the basal cell or the holdfast, which helps the plant body to attach to substratum. And there are many intercalary cells, all are elongated, almost rectangular in shape. And the uppermost cell in most of the species is called the apical cell, and it usually rounds off, and in some cases it ends in small needler like extensions. The basal cell or the holdfast forms the lowermost part of the thallus, and basically it is meant for attachment or holding on to surfaces. The cell is long and it gradually narrows towards the basal end, and it expands into a disc-like or a flattened disc with multi-lobed or finger-shaped structure, and it helps the plant body to keep fixed on a substratum, and usually this is colorless. Speaking of the apical cell, as you can see here, in most of the species the apical cell is rounded off, but in very rare cases you can see extensions as we saw in the other picture, and these are also green in color. They can take up photosynthesis because they have chlorophyll in it. The cells in between the basal cell and the apical cell, the cells are known as the intercalary cells or the middle cells, and most of them are longer than their breadth. That means they are rectangular in shape, as you can see over here, and towards the upper end of some cells, some structures you can see, it is known as the caps, the apical caps. You can see over here in this picture, you can see here in this picture as well, tiers of caps. And the cells which carry the caps are known as the capsules, and the presence of caps determines, or it is a sign that the cell has undergone division. We will speak about it in the upcoming slides. So the number of caps on a cell, particular cell, says how many times the cell has undergone division. If you speak about the inner structure of a single cell of Eudogonium, as I said earlier, the cells are elongated and cylindrical, mostly rectangular in shape. It has got a three-layered cell wall, which is thick, rough, and rigid. And the innermost layer is made up of cellulose. The middle one is made up of pectin, and the outermost one is made up of inelastic chitin. Inner to the cell wall, we can find the protoplasm. Protoplasm consists of a thin plasma membrane followed by the cytoplasm and all the different organelles. There is a prominent central vacuole and nucleus is seen towards the periphery. Then one of the most distinguishing features that you can see inside the cell is the reticulate chloroplast. And in this reticulate chloroplast, there are embedded pyrannoid bodies also, you can see at almost the interjunctions of the reticulate chloroplast. Then the central vacuole consists of the cell sap, which is a place where you can have all the excretions, secretions, and the inorganic compounds. So, speaking about the structure of the cell, it is covered by a 3-layered cell wall, innermost cellulose, middle pectin, and the outermost chitin. There is a central vacuole which comprises of the cell sap containing all the excretions and secretions. Then you have a prominent nucleus towards the periphery. Then a reticulate chloroplast is also seen. So in this picture, you can very clearly see this is a microscopic picture where you can see the reticulate chloroplast and you can see the pyrannoid bodies over here. The pyrannoid bodies are covered with starch plates, and as I earlier said, there is a nucleus which is lying towards the periphery. It also consists of 1 or 2 nucleoli and thread-like elongated chromosomes. Then all the other cell organelles like the mitochondria, Golgi bodies, endoplasmic reticulum, etc. are also seen in the cytoplasm. How does the cell divide and grow? The growth of Eurogonium filament takes place by simple cell division in intercalary cells mostly. The picture that you are seeing right over here, it shows the different stages through which an intercalary cell goes while it is dividing into 2 daughter cells. Let's check out in detail how the cell divides. At the beginning of cell division, what happens is the nucleus, which is in a peripheral position, will move towards the center and slightly towards the upper part of the cell. Once the nucleus is moved slightly towards the upper part of the cell, soon you can see small projections or ridges that are being formed from the wall layers towards the upper end of the cell. This will start thickening and form a kind of ring of thickening around the cell, and this ring mostly comprises of the inner wall and the middle wall only. Because the inner wall and the middle wall are elastic, the outer wall is left out because it is inelastic. And as the division proceeds, the nucleus divides mitotically into 2, and meanwhile this ring of thickening, it starts grooving in, and as the division proceeds, the groove gradually proceeds and the cell starts elongating, or rather you could say it starts stretching. Meanwhile, a small septum is formed between the 2 daughter nuclei from the center towards the periphery. So towards the beginning of the cell division, this septum is seen floating in the middle of the cell. And gradually, the upper part of the cell stretches towards the top. Thereby, what happens is the inelastic outer cell wall will burst or it will snap, and a small remnant will remain towards the top part of the newly formed cell. In the meanwhile, the septum that is formed in the middle between the 2 daughter nuclei, it will stretch out and it will go and merge with the mother cell wall, thereby completing the separation of the two cells into the two daughter cells. Okay, and the cell, the topmost cell, which carries the remnant of the mother cell wall, that is the outer cell wall, it looks as though it is wearing a cap, and hence this is known as a cap, and the cell which carries the cap is known as the cap cell. And further divisions take place in each of these cells, and with every division there will be a cap formation, and by counting the number of caps in a particular cell we can understand how many times the cell has undergone division. So the distal part of the upper cell will always contain a small part of the old parent wall, and that particular cell is known as the cap cell, and the number of caps on a particular cell is an indication of how many times the cell has undergone division. So to speak the story once more, just look at this picture. It speaks the whole story in one single stretch. This intercalary cell is now getting ready to divide. At the onset of division, the nucleus moves from the periphery towards the center and moves a little bit towards the top of the cell. Meanwhile, the inner walls grooves in, forming a ring of thickening. The nucleus divides into two daughter nuclei by simple mitotic division. The groove deepens into almost a ring by the stretching of the wall layers, inner and the middle wall layers. A small septum is formed which floats in the middle from the center towards the periphery. And as the growth or the division proceeds, the topmost part of the cell stretches towards the upper end, and the outermost cell wall breaks open and a remnant is left behind in the top of the cell. So this stretching will lead to the formation of a new cell. Meanwhile, the septum will grow from the center to the periphery and it goes and touches with the mother cell wall. And now the division is complete and you have your two daughter cells, and the topmost cell which carries the cap is known as the cap cell. And by counting the number of caps in a particular intercalary cell, you can know how many times the cell has undergone division. So this is how a cell in the eudogonium filament divides and leads to the growth of the filament. So here also you can see how the growth proceeds in eudogonium cells. Speaking about the reproduction system in eudogonium, it takes place by three major methods. One is vegetative mode, second is the asexual mode, and the third one is the sexual mode. Let's discuss each one in detail. First, let's take a look at how it reproduces by the vegetative method. We know that eudogonium is a filamentar algae, and it is seen in water. So whenever there is a change in the current, water current, there is every possibility that the filament could break. That is, the filament can break into smaller fragments, and each of these fragments are capable of developing into a complete new thallus under favorable conditions, and this process is hence known as fragmentation. So the fragmentation could take place due to any of the following reasons. As I said earlier, by the accidental breaking of the filament, that could happen because of the change in the water current, or if some animals chew it up, it can break and form fragments. Then dying or dehydration of any intercalary cells could also lead to the fragmentation of the filament. And some of these intercalary cells gradually form sporangia during asexual reproduction, and they break open to release the zoospores. At that point also, fragmentation could occur, or by change in the environmental conditions also, fragmentation can happen, and it could result in the formation of new thallus. The second method of vegetative reproduction is by the formation of achenids. These are rounded off bodies which are usually formed under unfavorable conditions. Achinid formation, in another word, we could say that these are modified vegetative cells which become swollen, rounded, and secrete very thick walls around them. Why? To tide over the unfavorable conditions. And most of the time, these achenids will be rich in reserved food materials and some change color from orangish to reddish color because of the presence of a oil secreted. So in some cases, achenids are formed in chains of 10 to 40 numbers could be seen in a single filament, and upon the return of favorable condition, each of these achenids can directly germinate to form a new filament. So achenids are normally the thick-walled structures that are formed, which are the modified vegetative cells formed as a measure to tide over unfavorable condition, and these are rich in reserved food materials, and they can germinate directly upon the return of favorable conditions. So mainly vegetative reproduction in Eudogonium take place by two methods. One is by simple fragmentation and the other is by the formation of achenids. Now let's discuss how asexual reproduction takes place in Eudogonium. Eudogonium, asexual reproduction takes place by a multiflagellated zoospore, and these zoospores are formed in some random intercalary capsules. So normally, capsules are the places where the zoospore formation starts, and such capsules which result in the formation of zoospore formation, they are known as the zoosporangium. You can see here a series of photographs which are showing how the cells changes in morphology while it is getting ready to reproduce asexually, and finally result in the formation of zoospore. And so what we can say that asexual reproduction is mainly by the formation of zoospore. Zoospores are multiflagellated and they are motile, and they are formed in a capsule which functions as the zoosporangium. So how does this happen? When an intercalary cell is transformed into a zoosporangium, the first thing that happens within the zoosporangium is that the cellular contents within the zoosporangium will contract from the cell wall and form a globular mass in the center of the cell to form the zoospore. So the cellular contents within the zoosporangium will contract from the cell wall and form a globular mass in the center, which later get transformed into what we call as the zoospore. And the zoospores are liberated from the filament when the filament breaks open, and the zoosporangium will open as though the lid is being shifted, and the zoospore is liberated into the water. The zoospore, as you can see over here, is a kind of pear-shaped structure, and it is multi-flagellate. As I said earlier, it is motile. So it swims about for some time in the water before it finds a suitable substratum upon which it can go settle down and then gradually grow up into a new thallus. So when the intercalary cell or the capsule is ready to go into asexual reproduction, the contents of the capsule, which functions as a zoosporangium, will round off, become a globular mass in the center of the cell, and gradually transforms itself into a single zoospore. Zoospores are multiflagellated bodies which can swim around in water for some time. before they settle down to grow into the new filament. So this is how a zoospore, mechazoospore looks like. It is oval or spherical or pear-shaped structure. As you can see here in this small video over here, the zoospores, after they have been liberated from the zoosporangium, they swim about for some time before they settle down. If you look very closely to this picture or the picture over here, you can see that this is a pear-shaped or a spherical shaped structure, and it is usually uninucleate structure. It is green in color because it has got chloroplast and it can photosynthesize. And it has got a small snout-like thing, and the snout-like thing is hyaline or it is colorless. And just beneath the hyaline part, if you closely look at these zoospores which are running around, you might be able to see that there are some flagella that is moving, and this flagella is arranged as a ring, subapical ring, and this arrangement of flagella in a ring-like fashion is known as stephanocontic type. This you have to remember. The subapical ring of flagella is present, and the arrangement of flagella in a ring-like fashion is known as stephanocontic type. So this is the mechazoospore that you are seeing over here. So these are the series of pictures that you can see here. It shows Eudogonium in different stages of its asexual reproduction. These are the pictures which are showing how the whole process of asexual reproduction that is taking place in Eudogonium. In the first picture, you can see here the rounding off of the cellular contents in the zoosporangium, which results in the formation of the zoospore. And here you can see how the zoospore is getting liberated from the zoosporangium. And here you can see that it is completely liberated and it is emerging. And this is a zoospore swimming. And if you take a close look, this is a hyaline part of the anterior part of the zoospore. And it is at this point that you can see the ring of flagella that is attached, which makes it a stephanocontic type. And the zoospore is about to attach to a substratum. And here you can see it is already attached itself, and here it has settled down, and it is showing signs that it is going to divide and form into a new filament. Now you can take a look at how exactly this is happening in this short video clip. Watching very closely, you can see the reticulate chloroplast. So this is a zoospore getting ready to be liberated. And you can see the zoosporangium is opening up. And very slowly, the zoospore is emerging out from the zoosporangium. You can see the hyaline snout. And now it is completely liberated out of the zoosporangium. See, this is how the fully mature zoosporangium looks like. If you watch very closely, you can see the flagella too. Zoosporangium swims about for some time before it finds a suitable substratum upon which it can come and settle down. to continue with its growth and development. So hope you would have understood how the whole process of zoospore formation is taking place. And moving on now, we will discuss about the sexual reproduction that is taking place within Oogonium. Sexual reproduction is of advanced oogamous type. That means it exhibits sexual dimorphism in the sense that the male and the female gametes are morphologically dissimilar as well as they are physiologically different. Male gametes are smaller in size and they are motile, while the female gamete is bigger in size and non-motile. Male gametes are produced in structures known as antheridia, and the female gametes are produced in the female sex organs known as the oogonia. So depending on the distribution of the sex organs in the eudogonial filament, two different types of eudogonium have been identified. One type is known as the macrandrous type and the second type is known as the nenandrous type. In macrandrous type, antheridia are born on normal sized filaments, and in nenandrous type, antheridia are born on special kind of male filaments which are way smaller than the female filament. So in macrandrous type, both oogonia and antheridia are born on filaments which are of normal size, while in nenandrous type, oogonia are born on normal sized filament, but antheridia are born on filaments which are very much smaller than the female filament, and hence those male filaments which carry the antheridia in nenandrous type are called nenandrium or a dwarf male. So in nenandrous type, antheridia, the male sex organs, are born on special small sized male filament which are called as the dwarf male or the nenandria. Coming back to the macrandrous species, in which the antheridia and oogonia are born on filaments of the normal size, we can identify two types, which is monoecious type, where antheridia and oogonia are found on the same filament, as in Eudogonium nodulosum, or they could be dioecious, wherein antheridia are born on male filaments and oogonia are born on female filaments. That means antheridia and oogonia are born on different filaments. They look morphologically similar, but they are physiologically different. You can see such dioecious types in Eudogonium crassum and Eudogonium aquatica. So based on the distribution of sex organs, broadly you can divide Eudogonium into two types, macrandrous type and the nenandrous type. In macrandrous type, antheridia and oogonia are both born on normal sized filaments. Macrandrous type again subdivided into macrandrous monoecious and macrandrous dioecious. Macrandrous monoecious, both male and the female sex organs are formed on the same filament. In macrandrous dioecious, antheridia are born on a different filament and oogonia are born on yet another filament. Coming on to the nenandrous type, here antheridia and oogonia are born on filaments which show distinct morphological characteristics. Male filament which carries the antheridia are way smaller than the female filament and are known as dwarf male or the nenandria. And in this, there is always dioecious because antheridia and oogonia are born on different filaments. So in this picture, you can see here, it shows the two types of macrandrous eudogonial filaments. The first one that you are seeing here is macrandrous monoecious. This bulged portion, this is a female reproductive structure, the oogonium, which carries the egg or the oosphere. And these small structures that you can see here, these small cells, these are the antheridia which bears the male gamete. And here you can see the two different filaments bearing oogonium and the antheridium. This is Macrandrus dioecious type. Speaking about the Nanandrium or the dwarf male, these are, you can see here, this is what I am speaking about. This is a dwarf male. This is a dwarf male. So these dwarf males, or the filaments which produce antheridium, are actually formed from androspores. And the androspores are formed in androsporangia, which are formed on the normal filaments. Any intercalary cell from the normal filament can convert itself into an androsporangia and produce androspores, which then develop into the dwarf male or the Nanandrium. And if androsporangia and oogonia are formed on the same filament, such eudogonial forms are known as gynandrosporous. What does it mean by the androsporangia and oogonia? If they are born on the same filament, such oogonial types are known as gynandrosporous. And if the androsporangia and oogonia are formed on different filaments, then such eudogonium types are known as ediandrosporous. You need to remember these two words. So let's see how antheridia is formed. Basically, the formation of antheridia in Macrandrus type is starting from a cap cell, which gives rise to antheridium. That means any cap cell can function as the antheridial mother cell and undergo a series of divisions. The first division is a transverse division, which divides the cell into two unequal halves. The upper one is a small cell which functions as the antheridium, and the lower one is the largest cell which functions as the sister cell. The sister cell again undergo unequal division, giving rise to a smaller upper antheridial cell and a lower, bigger sister cell. And this division can continue repeatedly to form a row of antheridial cells. Around 2 to 40 antheridial cells could be seen at a time in a particular filament. And the protoplast within the antheridial cells will now get transformed into the antherozoids. The protoplast within the antheridial cell will now undergo division longitudinally or transversely and divide themselves into two. And these two protoplasts will now transform themselves to become an antherozoid or spermatozoid. Antherozoid or the spermatozoid, which is a male gamete, it has a structure similar to that of the zoospore, and it gets liberated in a similar fashion by breaking open the antheridial wall, and they are liberated out into the water. How does antheridia form in the Nanandrius type? As I said earlier, antheridia in a Nanandrus type of eudogonium are formed on short filaments, which are known as the dwarf male or the Nanandria. The dwarf male or the Nanandrium are formed from specialized spores known as androspores, which I told earlier is formed within an androsporangium that is born on a filament, normal filament. And once this androspore is formed, it gets liberated from the androsporangium and it swims about for some time, and then it comes and settles down on oogonium or the cell adjacent to the oogonium, and from there it will germinate to form the dwarf male or the Nanandria. So what happens is any of the intercalary cell in the normal filament can function as the androsporangium, and the contents within the androsporangium get transformed itself into an androspore. And just as the zoospores were liberated from the zoosporangium, the androspores are also liberated from the androsporangium. They are also motile. They swim about for some time. Then they find a oogonium or a cell adjacent to the oogonium, come settle down on the oogonium itself or the cell adjacent to the oogonium, and from there it will start germinating to give rise to a dwarf male or the Nanandria. So you can see here in the picture, this is the dwarf male or the Nanandria. This dwarf male is not just simply spoken as dwarf male, it is a dwarf filament because it carries a holdfast and then only 2 or 3 or 4 cells towards the top, and each of these cells can transform themselves into an antheridial cell and can produce antherozoids or the male gametes, just the similar way the antherozoids are formed in the macroandrous type. So what you are seeing here is a dwarf male. This is a basal cell which will hold on to the oogonium or the cell adjacent to the oogonium. Then the 1 or 2 cells towards the upper side, they will function as the antheridial cells or the antheridial mother cell, and the contents within the antheridial mother cell will get transformed into antherozoids or the spermatozoids, and by breaking open of this antheridial cell wall, the antherozoids are liberated into water. So that is about the male reproductive part. Now we will discuss about how oogonium or the female reproductive part is formed. The structure and development of oogonium is similar in both macroandrous as well as nanandrous species, because in both the cases they are formed on normal filaments. The female sex organ, the oogonia, gets differentiated into the female gametangia. It is a differentiated female gametangia. As you can see here, any actively growing cap cell can function as a oogonial mother cell. So once this is destined to become the oogonial mother cell, what happens is it will start bulging and rounding off, and the oogonial mother cell will divide transversely and produces 2 unequal cells, the upper cell and the lower cell. But in this case, the upper cell is larger and that forms the oogonium, and the smaller lower cell function as a supporting cell or the sulfactory cell. So any intercalary cell can function as an oogonial mother cell. The oogonial mother cell will start bulging out. It will undergo unequal division. Upper part will be larger. That gets rounded off to form the female gametangium, that is oogonium, and the lower smaller cell will remain as a supporting cell. The protoplast within the oogonial cell will get transformed into rounded off or transformed into what you call as a single cell egg cell or the oosphere. It will get transformed itself into a single egg or the oosphere. Here you can see how it looks like. The cellular contents condenses and moves away from the cell wall and transforms themselves into oosphere. This is a non-motile cell. It is green because it has got chlorophyll and it has got a central nucleus. And as the development proceeds and as the ovum matures, the nucleus moves towards the periphery, mostly towards the periphery. You can see here it's moving towards the periphery, and it retracts slightly from the oogonial wall, and there forms a area which is hyaline or colorless, and this acts as a receptive spot just near to the upper end of the oogonium. As you can see here, this is a receptive spot, and it is this spot that receives the antherozoids which enter into the oogonial wall and effect fertilization. So this is the capsule which got transformed into the oogonium, and you can see here the oosphere. So what happens during fertilization? Now that the antherozoids are liberated, they have been swimming in water for some time. Now they have found a oogonium which is ready to receive the antherozoids. Now the oosphere or the egg is also mature enough to receive the antherozoids. So what next is, just before fertilization, the oogonial or the mature egg will start secreting some chemical substances or mucilaginous substances as a way of attracting the antherozoids. And this antherozoids will swim towards the opening of the oogonial wall, and it will enter through this hyaline receptive spot. Even though many of the antherozoids will swim towards the oogonium, only one antherozoid is allowed to enter into the ovum and fuse with the egg. And once one of the antherozoids have entered, this opening will be closed by some mucilaginous thing that will thicken. Zygote will start secreting a thick wall around itself so that no more antherozoids can enter or fuse. So soon plasmogamy and karyogamy takes place, that is fusion between the protoplasm as well as the nucleus take place, and it will result in the formation of a diploid zygote. The zygote will secrete thick wall around it and transforms itself into what we call as the oospore. Oospore will be liberated from the oogonium when the oogonial wall is disintegrated. So this is what happens during fertilization. At the time of fertilization, the egg will start secreting certain chemical substances or mucilaginous substances which will attract the antherozoids. Antherozoids will swim through the opening of the oogonial wall. It will enter through the receptive spot and it will fertilize the egg, and now you have your diploid zygote. Once fertilization is over, zygote will secrete a thick wall around itself and transform itself into what we call as the oospore. Oospore will be liberated from the oogonium when the wall ruptures. So once fertilization is done, the next thing is it should start germination. So before we speak about germination and further growth and development of the zygote into a complete filament, let's check out the structure of the oospore. Oospore, as you saw in the previous slide, it is a globular structure, and as soon as it is formed, it will be green in color. Gradually, it will change when it starts accumulating oils inside. It will change into reddish brown. Oogonial wall, as I said, is thick and multi-layered, and most of the time two-layered. And in some cases it will be smooth, but in some cases it will be ornamented with pits, reticulations, or spines. Ornamentation of zoospore is of very taxonomic importance because it helps to identify the species of the oogonium. That means ornamentation is specific to each different species. Oospore contains a diploid nucleus, and the cytoplasm will be rich in protein. So oospore is a globular structure with a diploid nucleus and a cytoplasm which is rich in protein, covered over by a multi-layer of thick cells, and it changes its color from green to reddish brown because of the accumulation of a red oil. So here you can see this is how the oosphere or the oospore looks like soon after it has made all the ornamentations and the wall layers. So first, once it is liberated from the oogonium, the first thing that it does is it will go to rest for some time before it germinates. So this period of rest for oospore may be a year or more depending on the species of Eudogonium. And just before germination, the diploid nucleus within the oospore will undergo meiotic division or the reduction division, which results in the formation of 4 haploid nuclei. So just before germination, that is at the end of the resting period, the diploid nucleus within the oospore will undergo reduction division or zygotic meiosis, which will result in the formation of 4 haploid nuclei before germination. The diploid oospore, that is the diploid nucleus after undergoing meiotic division, the 4 haploid nucleus will take up some of the protoplast from within and gets transformed into multiflagellate zoospores. And these zoospores are now known as zoomeospores or meozoospores. So they get transformed itself into zoomeospores or the meozoospores. And these zoomeospores or the zoomeospores, they are very much similar to that of the zoospores we saw in the asexual reproduction, and it will break open the wall layers of the oospore and then come out gradually, swim around for some time before it finds a suitable place to attach itself to and then start growing up into a new filament. So soon after the resting period is over and just before germination, the diploid nucleus within the oospore will undergo meiotic division to give rise to 4 haploid nuclei. Now, meanwhile, the protoplast within the oospore also divides into 4, and to each part of the protoplast, 1 haploid nucleus will enter. It will get transformed into what we call as meozoospores, which are multiflagellated zoospores. These multiflagellated meozoospores are soon liberated into the water, and it swims about for some time before it finds a substrate upon which it can attach and then grow. So this, you can see here the series of pictures which are showing this is a zoomeospore. You can see here the hyaline tape, which will gradually develop into the holdfast of the basal cell. Now it is finding a place to hold on to. Then here you can see the lower part will now gradually grow into the holdfast of the haptera, and then the upper part will start undergoing division to form a filament. And this picture over here on the left, it speaks the whole story of sexual reproduction taking place within oogonium. You can see here, this is a monoecious filament which shows oogonium as well as the antheridium. The antherozoids are liberated from the antheridium. It can go fertilize the egg. After fertilization, the zygote is formed. The zygote or the oospore is liberated. Then just before germination, it will undergo meiotic division and it will form zoomeospores. The zoomeospores are liberated. It can come, fall down, then it will find a substratum and gradually start growing into a new filament. So this is the whole story of how Eudogonium reproduces sexually. And this is a story of the Macrandrus type. So this picture again shows a life cycle of Eudogonium, and here you can see the Macrandrus species showing. This is a Macrandrus monoecious species that is showing. The left hand side shows the asexual reproduction, which is taking place by this formation of zoospores, and the right hand side shows a sexual reproduction where you can see here antheridium, oogonium, oospore formation, reduction, division, zoomeospores coming down, settling down, and growing back into the oogonial filament. So this is the life cycle of Macrandrus monoecious species. You can make your own version of the Macrandrus dioecious species. Only thing is, in that case, this antheridium will be seen in a different filament and oogonium will be seen in a different filament. The rest of the things remains the same. And so you should learn how to draw the life cycle of monoecious as well as dioecious Macrandrus type of Eudogonium. And the interesting thing is, if you look at the life cycle of Eudogonium, the thing that you can see, notice, is that all the cells starting from the mother filament, all the cells except the zygote is haploid, and the only diploid cell that is seen throughout the life cycle of Eudogonium is the zygotic cell. That means the type of life cycle that Eudogonium follows is haplontic life cycle, because the zoospores, antheridium, the egg, antherozoid, zoomeospores, all of those cells are haploid, and only the diploid cell that you can see in the entire life cycle is a zygotic cell, which is diploid. So this life cycle is known as haplontic life cycle. So the case of Nanandrous type life cycle, as I said earlier, Oogonium and Androsporangia may be born on a single filament or can be born on different filaments. Anyway, from the Androsporangia, androspores are formed. These androspores will come, either it will come and settle down on the oogonium directly, or the cell adjacent to the oogonium. This androspore will germinate to give rise to a short male filament known as the dwarf male or the nanandrium. And within the nanandrium, antheridium will be formed, and within the antheridium, you will have your antherozoids or the spermatozoids. In the oogonium, the egg will be formed, antherozoids will fertilize the egg, result in the formation of oospore. Oospore will rest for some time, then before germination undergo meiotic division, will give rise to zoomeospores, which is haploid, which will settle down and then finally grow up into the normal eudogonial filament. So this is about the Nanandrous life cycle, eudogonial life cycle. And here also the asexual reproduction takes place by the formation of zoospores within the zoosporangium. And if you take a look very closely at the life cycle of the Nanandrous type of Eudogonium also, you can see that all the cells are in haploid condition except the zygotic cell, which is diploid, and hence this life cycle is what we call as the haplontic life cycle. So we have discussed today unbranched filamenta type of chlorophysian member, Eudogonium. We have discussed about the structure, the morphology, and how the eudogonial filaments reproduce. 3 different types of reproduction we have discussed: vegetative, asexual, and sexual. Sexual is oogamous, and within that we have discussed about the Macrandrous type as well as the Nanandrous type. You need to remember all these terminologies, as well as you need to know how a capsule is being formed and how the filament divides and forms new cells to add on to the length of the filament. That is usually by the formation of capsules, and it is the formation of capsules that results in the extension of the filament. And by counting the number of caps in a capsule, you can say how many times that particular cell has undergone division. So all the best, and thanks for listening.